What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 2 of the MMO Junkies Podcast. I am your host, Swiper, and today I will be doing this show solo. So if you caught our first episode, I had a few friends on and we talked about what we thought makes a good MMO. And we also talked about some of the features we liked and that we really didn't like in a lot of the MMOs today. After doing our first show, it started to become impossible to get our schedules aligned. Every time we tried to meet, something happened and we delayed the show. Eventually, we just never got around to doing it. So this was a show that I really wanted to keep going and I wanted to continue, and I just said, screw it. If we can't get our schedules aligned, let me just go ahead and do it solo, and if these guys want to jump in every once in a while because of the topic or whatever, I'd be more than happy to have them on. So with all that being said, let's move on to the topic at hand. Does your first MMORPG hold sway over your perception of how an MMORPG should be played or designed? Before we answer this question, I want you to think about how you found out about the MMORPG genre. I then want you to think about the first MMO you fired up on your PC or your console. I also want you to think about how you came across it. Did you find it on the internet? Did you find it while browsing at a gaming store? Or did a friend introduce you to it? My first introduction to MMOs was Final Fantasy XI. Now, to put this into perspective for everyone, Final Fantasy XI came out in 2002. So this put me at about 16 years old. I don't recall the exact year my friend played it, but I do remember him playing it on his PlayStation 2. I recall going over to his house and seeing what he was up to on the weekend, and I saw this game on his big screen TV downstairs where we always gamed out. And once he started explaining the game to me, he sounded extremely frustrated because he thought it was going to be more like a Final Fantasy single player game, and it wasn't. He was pretty distraught about it. He was just like, all I do is run around and try and find quests and do things, and half the time I'm dying and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think either one of us knew exactly what this game was or what type of game this was. I don't think we even knew what MMOs were back then. But after hearing the frustration in his voice, a wave of excitement grew over me. Here's a game where you can level any class and party with anyone at any time. It wasn't a console game where you were just one person surrounded by NPCs following this story. You were an actual person that you created, and other people created these people as well, and you could see them and talk to them. And there was this whole world to explore, and the game had a familiar sense to it, meaning the game had, the iconic characters like the white mage, the black mage, the warrior, the paladin, everything that I was familiar with and that I loved in their prior games, this game had. So as he's explaining this game to me, I'm sitting on the couch with him and I'm trying to figure out, well, why don't we just play this together? I'll make a white mage and you play whatever the heck you want to play, and I'll just heal you so you don't die. And I'm like, give me that controller and we'll figure it out. And he goes, it's not how it works. This game is not like what we're used to. He eventually told me that you need your own account, you need to have your own computer or PlayStation 2, and you need to pay a monthly fee. And as soon as I heard monthly fee, I was shot down. I mean, right then and there at that moment, I was 16, I was playing 3 different sports, and there was no way my parents were going to say, oh yeah, we'll give you money every month. Because to them, back then, gaming was a waste of time. It was a waste of time, and I should be outside playing sports, and that's what I should be doing. And as a kid, that's all I should be worrying about, and I shouldn't worry about money, which was nice in a sense, but this was something I really wanted to do. So as I left, I just knew that this wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to be able to play this game, and I wanted to play something very similar to it. So with my excitement being completely drained, I started to search for other MMOs or other games like Final Fantasy XI, and this is where I started to learn about the whole online gaming experience. Now, I did play games like StarCraft and Warcraft where I would play against people and with people, but this was something entirely different. This was something completely different that I've never experienced before in my entire life. So while I was searching on the internet, I stumbled upon a game called Guild Wars 1. Can't remember if it was an advertisement or if it was just something I saw while searching around, other sites. But I do recall seeing no monthly fee. And as soon as I saw this, I went to the page and looked at the PC specs. To my surprise, my PC met most of the minimum requirements. That's right, most of the minimum requirements. From there, I was hooked on MMOs. I loved Guild Wars 1 so much, it actually forced me to learn about computers and computer components. After playing Guild Wars for some time, I started to realize that my computer was really shitty and not meeting all the minimum specs caught up to me. Honestly, when I booted up Guild Wars, I had to restart my computer every 20 to 30 minutes because my computer would crash. Later on, I learned that the culprit was my RAM and I needed more of it. Now, of course, I needed a better graphics card, I needed a better processor, I needed better everything, but that game ran on such low specs that my computer was a little bit better now that I added more RAM. So after experiencing Guild Wars 1 to the fullest extent that I could, I remember playing through the campaign, and the game made it really easy to group up with people because every time you kind of progress through the game, you needed to form up groups with people to do the quests and the story from what I remember. And the game even had some really good PvP. So I physically learned all aspects of my character. And now I played an elementalist monk, which is basically I could heal and do damage, and each element felt like it served a purpose, and the game just felt really good. I could customize my character the way I wanted. There was certain gear that I wanted to do PvP things with. It was just such a good game, and it really felt like something I've played in other RPGs and other games like that. So eventually I came across World of Warcraft, mainly because I played a lot of StarCraft and Warcraft, and I played a little bit of Diablo. So, some of the things all kind of connected, and it gave me that familiar sense. From there, a whole new world opened up to me that felt familiar. It also felt safe. It felt dangerous, and it felt extremely exhilarating. And honestly, this game touched on so many different emotions. It was just insane, like absolutely insane. I don't know about you guys, but I have a ton of random and vivid memories of this game. One of my first memory was me jumping on a griffin and flying into Stormwind. It was so crazy. Like, I wasn't actually like flying as a human being, but jumping on that griffin and that thing taking off, it just, I don't know, man, like blew me away. Like, it was insane. And it's just something I'll always remember. Partying with a group of friends and exploring Black Fathom Deeps together was also a really cool experience because I knew everybody in the party. We were all friends, and we jumped into that dungeon, and we had no idea what we were doing, and we were just going through mobs and dying to bosses. And I remember my one buddy always yelling at my other buddy that was a paladin to say, "Keep your buffs up, bring your buffs up, give us your buffs." And it was just really funny, and it was just awesome, and it's an experience that I'll never ever forget. After experiencing 2 different MMOs, the whole genre of an MMO was so intriguing to me. It made me forget about every other game that I used to play that wasn't an MMO. The fact that you and a few friends could be sitting at home in different locations and party together was just awesome. And the fact that you could party together and be in this open world, this giant world where you could quest and explore dungeons and even hunt down the enemy together. The fact that you could create these classes that synchronized so well, like having a healer and having some DPS and having a tank. Everybody had a role, and that role was needed within your group, and everybody served a purpose. And that truly made it feel like you were distinct and you were in a living, breathing, open world. And it is the best feeling in the world when you have that in a game. Let's face it, from 2001 to 2014, we saw a ton of MMOs release that were big titles. Now, of course, there are a lot of titles I'm going to miss here, but to mention a few, we had Dark Age of Camelot release in 2001. We had Final Fantasy XI release in 2002. We had WoW and City of Heroes release in 2004. We had Guild Wars 1 released in 2005. Rift released in 2011. And WildStar released in 2014. So yes, again, I know I'm missing a lot of these MMOs, but these were some of the MMOs that I tried and played. So now that we're done going down memory lane, let's get back to the topic. Does that first MMO really shape your opinion about what an MMO should be in today's standards? So if I were to ask myself this question a few years back, I would say no. I would back up this argument by saying I played many different MMOs, and enjoyed them to an extent. Every time a new MMO released and it looked good or appealing, I tried it out. But today, I want to change that stance and say yes. The main reason being, I find myself searching for things that I experienced in Guild Wars 1 and in World of Warcraft. Back when I played WoW, it was during the Burning Crusade era. So I didn't actually play like Classic, but I played when Burning Crusade launched. So obviously the game is much different than now, but what I guess I'm trying to say is I'm looking for things that I experienced back then. Every time I try a new MMORPG or play an older MMORPG that has seen a ton of changes, I tend to think back to what I remember when I first played an MMO. I also find myself gravitating towards some of the game design features that I experienced for the first time. I mean, think about it. After that first MMORPG you played, did you play any other MMOs after that point? If you did, how long did you stick to them? And while you were playing them, did you make any kinds of comparisons, whether it was the UI or how the character moved or how the spells worked or how CC worked? Did it bother you at all? Did you sit there and say, well, this game should have this because without having this, it kind of sucks? Like, one thing for me that I always compared was CC and how game developers controlled the amount of CC and how many times you could get CC. I mean, this always comes back to me in every single game I play. Another example that I can give, one thing I truly loved in Guild Wars 1 was the fact that you can combine two classes and make them into one character. Didn't matter what classes you chose, you just picked two and put them together. If you thought two looked cool, sounded cool, you could put them together. Could suck, but hey, you could make it work. Having that choice made this game feel normal. Because remember, the first game I saw was Final Fantasy XI, and in that game, you could combine two classes. That was just kind of my general understanding. When you played an MMO, you had a choice, and you used that choice to make what you wanted. Another example was WoW, and how that game was completely opened versus Guild Wars 1. When you went from zone to zone in WoW, there wasn't a loading screen, you just did. There were no actual hubs where you had to go to form a party. I could be killing a mob for a quest and somebody could run by and they could say, hey, I need these mobs too, let's party up. That is something you really couldn't do in Guild Wars 1. And these are the things that really shaped and molded my mind. Even the graphics themselves. Both worlds being 3D, both worlds having 3D objects and the way you can tilt your camera and move your camera and how the movement was. Now, both games weren't completely the same, but they were just enough to be similar, so it felt comfortable. So when I grabbed my mouse and keyboard, I wasn't trying to rearrange things and change things so much, and it was comforting. It really was. Let's face it, things have definitely changed over the years when it comes to MMOs and even modern MMOs. A lot of games have either made it, they failed, or they had to change their whole entire business model just to stay afloat. And after all these changes and evolutions and whatever you want to call it, MMOs are still my preferred genre to play to this day. But sometimes it does feel like something is missing. Sometimes a lot of what I experienced as a teenager is gone. The feeling of exploration is gone. The feeling of being in danger is gone. And the feeling of wanting to party with people and explore an open world is gone. A lot of what got me hooked to an MMO genre is gone. And realizing this over the past few years has made me analyze this question over and over again. Is it me? Are my expectations too high for modern MMO? Or am I just living in the past? Do I need to get over the past and just accept what's in front of me? To be honest, it feels like I've been stricken with this crazy curse. There's a ton of great games out there. There are a ton of great games that allow you to customize your character in so many different ways. But those games are from a very, very long time ago. And it's difficult for me to get invested in some of these games because of some small things that I wish I could get over. Maybe it's the graphics. Maybe it's the UI. Maybe it's how you interact with the environment. Maybe it's the fact that you have to do so much research outside of the game to actually play in the game. And this all goes back to what I was talking about earlier in answering that initial question. Sometimes I think, if my first MMORPG was UO, would everything be different for me today? Would I look at these other games and say, you know, the customization doesn't match this. I'm going back to UO because guess what? Nothing touches it, and this is the game that I first played. And to face reality, to face actual facts, and anybody can tell you this that knows me very well or pretty well. I have always constantly gone back to World of Warcraft. And I even bought Guild Wars 1 again because I lost my copy and all this other stuff, and I'll play that every once in a while. I've tried so many different MMOs, and the most games that really stuck with me that I've played for a few months were games that kind of resembled WoW. Games like Rift, games like Warhammer. I mean, those were the games that really stuck with me. Even Final Fantasy XIV, I was going on a pretty big binge on that game and got to raiding. Now, one can argue that games have changed over the years to meet the demand of the casual gamer. And when I say that, I mean making classes easier to play, making group forming easier to play, making dungeons easier to play, allowing you to skip things and not have to force you to really do something challenging until the end of the game. Some may also say that, hey, you were a teenager back then and now you're an adult. Your perspective on things is way different. I mean, let's face it. Today, I have a house, I have a baby boy, I'm married, I have a dog. Versus when I was a teenager, I was living at home and I didn't have a whole lot to worry about. But I have to say this. I don't think growing up has any real significance on what you think an MMO should be. As long as you're still into MMOs and you're still into what you believe is what you think a game should be. I have a lot less time to play a game compared to when I was living with my parents. I still appreciate everything that I played back when I was a teenager, and all I want to do is kind of encompass that now into the games I'm playing today. One thing I can agree is that a lot of MMOs now do cater to the more casual audience, but I still think that some MMOs can challenge you with instant content, especially at endgame. But again, back then, I didn't play a game to get to endgame. I played a game because I enjoyed every minute I was in that world. I enjoyed every aspect of it, and I wasn't thinking about endgame. I was thinking about what I was going to do that day and what I was going to do tomorrow. So to wrap up this topic, again, I truly do think that your first MMO that you play really does morph or manipulate your perspective upon how you look at other MMOs. And if anybody can agree with me, definitely let me know. Let me know what your first MMO is, and let me know if you're still playing MMOs, what MMO you're currently playing. And if you totally disagree with me, I want to hear about it too, because there is a part of me that really does want to get rid of this curse, that really does want to be able to look the other way when something is so blaring to me that I can't get over it. But anyhow, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you made it all the way through, hell yes, thank you so much. And please hit that thumbs up. And if you want more topics like this, please let me know in the comments as well. This is something that I really enjoy doing. A lot of you who follow me probably follow me for the Camelot Unchained stuff and some of maybe the random stuff that I do. But MMOs in general have been something that has always stuck with me. And no matter how much I try and play different types of games or other types of games, in a matter of days, I'm coming back to an MMO. And these are the topics that I love talking about. And I would really like to do more shows just like this. So if you liked it, again, please let me know, and please hit that subscribe button. And if you have any topics that you want me to talk about or you want to hear my perspective on, please let me also know, because I would love to just straight up talk about MMOs. So please, everyone, stay safe and have a great week, and I will talk to y'all in the near future. Peace out.